Hello, and we are live. Guys, please forgive us for the really,
Hello, everyone.
really slow internet connection tonight. We are dealing with some Wi-Fi issues, and I'm not sure on what end things are happening. I do know that there is quite a bit of construction out here, and I experienced a lag when I was doing a client reading in the same format that I'm doing this video now. So it's not Dave's fault, just letting you know. It's probably something on my end running the program, and it might even be on StreamYard side, it might be on YouTube side. So we're just not really sure, but we're going to do our best to get through this. So we are going to be speaking tonight about why Tia Eldalieva, the Elven Spiritual Path, is called the Elven Spiritual Path, and it's not what you might think that it is. And we'll get to that here in a moment. First, I'm going to pull in the document that we have. And by the way, if you guys need copies of these documents and the references, they are in the link below in the video. So if you were to scroll down in the description, there's a Mega NZ link that will link you to all of these documents, including the one that we're going to be showing in the live stream this evening. So we'll go ahead and pull all of this up. And can you guys see all of this okay? And maybe what I'll do is make it even bigger by putting us on the bottom, and I'll scroll. So what I can do is take the bar and scroll it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, that looks good, actually.
Okay, excellent. So before I did all of this, I wanted to switch back for a moment. Okay, and I wanted to say hi to all of our people in the house tonight, and it keeps switching back and forth, so hang on a moment for my screen keeps, I don't think you guys are experiencing changes in your screen, but I am for some reason. So Faith is in the house. Draco and Nimue are both here. Howdy, howdy, howdy. We have Merlin, and we have Mariel, and we also have Dorian's lover, which is Christy. And I'm really glad to see all of you guys tonight. And because I forgot to notice you guys, because I was going to do it last night, and we've had some interruptions of schedule, and I had to change houses again. So I've been away for a week at a different house where it was kind of noisy and, lots of things going on. So no live streams. I'm back in the house that I'm by myself in, for the most part, so I can do these kinds of things, and it's not too disruptive to the household. But unfortunately, we're dealing with a weird internet connection tonight. So bear with us, but we will get through it. So I will start reading, and what I'm going to do, Dave, is I will pause at the end of paragraphs also, but if you need to alert me, you know how to do it on Facebook Messenger. Okay. I have it opened in the corner. Okay, so letting you guys know ahead of time what's going on here. So this is copyright 2022 by Luthien Marilyn, who is in Il Salunte Valion, west of west.org, for any of you that don't know who she is. Dave Woosley and the authors, and Tia Eldalieva, and all rights reserved. Why are we called Tia Eldalieva, the Elven Spiritual Path? It's not what you think. Our name, Tia Eldalieva, comes from these Quenya elements. Tia is a noun that means path, course, line, direction, or way. And Dave is really great to put the Elf Dict link for the word so that you guys can look at this yourself. Eldaliéva is from eldaliéva, which is a noun that means the elven folk. And the VA on the end is a possessive ending, and therefore it is an adjective about it's the elven path. Okay. So the elven path with the word elf in the phrase understood to directly denote the Quendi, which are the elves that appear in Tolkien's tales. Specifically and archetypally embodying those qualities of artistic, aesthetic, and purely scientific aspects of humane nature. Maybe human nature? That might
humane,
be human
but
nature.
He means no. He actually means humane in the sense of the whole envelope of qualities surrounding the best possible things that humans can come up with, and leaving out their evil side, basically.
I see. Okay, so it's a more expanded meaning of humane, the way that it's used here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Humane nature raised to a higher level than is actually seen in humans. And then he has a footnote that resonates to the letters of JRR Tolkien, and we have the supporting documents in the file that you can download in the Mega NZ link in the YouTube description. You'll see it underneath there. And for any of you watching the video, whether you're following on this now, like on the live stream, or whether it's on the replay, we're going to keep that link there so you can download the documents. Not only this paper, but also the reference documents. So Dave does all the work for you. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Okay. It is not intended to suggest the Alfar, the Huldo folk, the Twilight Hag, Satyros, that's Greek, although some conceptual blurring is probably unavoidable given that the meanings of many of these terms in their source languages overlap. That is said absolutely brilliantly. Because I try to tell people like the difference even with Tolkien elves versus, elven nature in general. And there is a lot of overlap, so it is very confusing. So this is worded really well to be where there might be elements of other elven archetypes pulled in, but it is not the same as the Tolkien elven archetype. It is literally a unique expression to me of what's going on. And I'll go ahead and scroll down. And Dave, did you have at this point anything to add?
No. You presented it very well.
Okay, there really is a terribly long lag here. And again, we apologize. JRR Tolkien's outline of the mythos. And so these are quotes from the letters of JRR Tolkien. It must be remembered that mythically, these tales are elf-centered, not anthropocentric, and men only appear in them at what must be a point long after their coming. This is therefore an elvish view and does not necessarily have anything to say about the essential nature of men, meaning that this is implied within the text. So anthropocentric would mean men-centered, meaning human-centered. Many of the mythos in the world, like the Abrahamic, religions, being, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are all based on the same stories, but they are anthropocentric to my knowing. However, there are some mythoses that are I'm not sure if that's the proper plural to use, but there are some myths in the world that align with, like, say for instance, an arrival of star people. So there are some of those types of myths too, and that there is a resonance of that, like within Tolkien's Legendarium, of that the Elven people are also, besides being called the speakers, which is what Quendi means, it is also the star people. So it is an interesting resonance. And I just wanted to bring that up here because some of you may say, well, the Egyptian mythos, talks about the star people arriving. And is it the same as elves? I would maybe say no, but I do find it that it is an interesting resonance. I'll just say that. And I believe that Dave wishes to add something at this point.
Well, I was just going to tell you that I typed into Messenger. When you continue to read that note, the dagger mark and the text after it is Tolkien's original footnote, not mine. So just to let you know.
Okay. Are you speaking of the one in which I'm using the cursor to circle around right now?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right. In narrative, as soon as the matter becomes storial and not mythical, being in fact human literature, the center of interest must shift to men and their relations with elves or other creatures. We cannot write stories about elves whom we do know nothing. Oh, I'm sorry. Whom we do not know inwardly. And if we try, we simply turn elves into men. So that's an important storytelling element, because in that, when people tell stories, write stories, if it's about something that's external from themselves, there would be no point in telling it unless it relates to, not only the storyteller, but perhaps the storytelling audience, at a personal level. The stories that actually matter are ones that affect us, right? So I could completely see that. And I also, in this statement, can see that the elven viewpoint of a story, it's because that's where it began. Like, for instance, the cosmology was the Elven cosmology, and they began from the view of the elves. But then it became, eventually, when men came into, and I mean humans, came into the stories organically, they show up, right? Then at that point, it then becomes like, how are humans interfacing with all of the beings, including the Elven, who were the first, or the elder race that was created by Iluvatar. Iluvatar, Eru, created elves and men. That's in the stories. The elves were created first. And so we didn't know about the creation of men. Men just end up showing up in the stories in the Silmarillion, and even in the history of Middle Earth, to my knowing, unless Dave is our resident expert for Legendarium. And Dave, are you aware of any of the stories in the Legendarium that talk about human creation? Now, I do know that there are differences between humans and elves, but to my knowing, there is no creation myth of men in the Legendarium. It was the elves, and then men showed up.
There is, but it's in the Book of Lost Tales, and it was a very early version. I forget the name of the sorcerer. I think he was called Two or something. He was basically what we would now call a Maiar person,
Okay.
Maiar being, and he had an an elven, basically, I don't know, servant or assistant or something, who went out and saw the early humans when they were still sleeping, and he actually woke
Oh,
two of them up, as I remember of it, and then he told two about that, and that was like, well, you shouldn't have done that. You know, they were there for a purpose.
oh,
You shouldn't have interfered. But it beyond
oh
that,
my gosh.
but this is a very early version, and it doesn't directly. I mean, everything in Tolkien is interrelated, but you can't directly relate it to the later stories. It's a something that may have gone further, but he never returned to. It's one of those things
Wow.
that that Christopher calls held in indefinite abeyance is the word that Christopher
Right.
used for it. Yeah, so
Wow. So, but interesting that there is a resonance of the awakening.
hmm yeah,
So the creation and the awakening, even with the clues that we have here, very
hmm
similar to how the elves were awoken. And remember how in the elven awakening that Iole, one of the Valar who had created dwarves, because he's a workaholic, right? Because I call him the workaholic of the
hmm
Valar.
right,
He was so excited, and he was creating the dwarves for his own, you know, his own work and pleasure and all of this. And he was so excited, he wanted to awaken the dwarves right away. But when Eru said, no, they cannot awaken first, the elves must awaken, Iole was like, oh, okay. You know, he waited.
right, right,
So even if he was excited and created them and did all of the things. But that's very interesting that instead of creating it already awake, that they're created and then they're awoken. And I think that
right,
that's
right.
just a very interesting resonance. It's very interesting. Okay. So we're going to scroll down a little bit here. Luthien had contributed. Thank you
Oh
again,
yeah,
Luthien.
I would like to give like a little preface to this. The reason that Luthien is writing here instead of me is because, unlike a lot of people who are attracted to Tolkien's mythos, I don't have a primary elven identification or even attraction. I'm a Tiger Therianthrope. Uh, Therianthropes are basically it comes from the Greek word literally meaning animal person, and you can see depictions of them on cave walls of 40,000 years ago. But you can think of it, if the most well-known example is werewolf in modern culture, but I'm a were-tiger, so it's a little
I
bit different.
see. I see.
actually
Yeah, it is
actually
not
in
common in our culture. Yeah. Hmm.
right, and
Yeah.
now in different parts of the world, there are in the Malayan peninsula, they call Harimojadian, which literally translates
Mm.
to imitation tiger or tiger simulation. Basically, in other words, it's not a
Mm.
regular tiger; it's something a little bit different. But
Very
this is the
interesting.
reason that this is the reason that I switched to someone who does have a primary elven draw to write about this. So that, and Luthien has basically has been into the Legendarium, I guess since she was at least 8 or 10, probably as long as I have. Given we're different ages, but she
Yeah.
came into it around that time of her life. So this is somebody
Okay.
that does have the elven draw, and so this is why I turned it over to her to explain.
That's really amazing. And the difference, I think, between even Luthien and myself, because I also have an elven draw, if you will, but my experience of it was something that was filtered through my pagan path that I had prior. And so I have a lot of, like, like I've worked with a lot of pantheons before. And that was one of the reasons that I was able to realize that this is a real pantheon, if you will, meaning the Valar, and how all of this works, because I have that kind of, I have, even before I recognized, like, I guess my own connection to elven nature, if you will, maybe elvenness, something like that. I wouldn't necessarily call it an elven identity. I wouldn't necessarily call it elven DNA. I wouldn't necessarily call it elven blood. I wouldn't necessarily even call it an elven soul. But I definitely have a resonance with elven energy. But I believe that Luthien has an even more pure connection because her background didn't have the other pantheons involved. She didn't come from a pagan background. She came from a Christian and then maybe more of a Gnostic background. Is that correct?
Yeah, because she told me privately that I guess by the time she was about 9 or 10, Catholicism just didn't do it for her anymore. So she then switched to basically to become an agnostic, not an atheist, but an agnostic. And then she returned to Tolkien later in her life, and although she had this sense still that there was something more than just beyond physical reality, and she'd have to tell her own story, but that's the basic idea. That
okay,
right around that time is when she found IV, right after I had founded it. So
I see, and that was around 2007. So that's pretty brilliant. So basically, in a nutshell, if somebody has to get going for any reason, we're going to give you a quick and dirty right now, right here. We are not called the Elven Path for the sake of Elven identity, Elven, like reflective, like of an Elvenness of a person, Elven soul, Elven wisdom, Elven, any of this stuff, okay? We are not called the Elven Path for those reasons. So there's a lot of people that feel like that they have to identify Elven in order to be with us. And that is not even remotely true. The Elven part of our name comes from the viewpoint of how the Middle Earth stories were told. They were told from an Elven viewpoint. The Elven cosmology, or the origins of the elves, primarily first, before the human element came involved. And then you'll notice that once the humans started arriving, the stories kind of took a little bit different of a turn, other than the background of describing, the basically what I call the Bible books, okay, if you will, of the Ainulindale, the Valaquenta. Once the human element came into the stories, there was a lot more focus on how it affected humans, okay? So we talk about this being the Elven Spiritual Path because the stories are told from an Elven viewpoint from Tolkien himself. And here we have the quotes of how he even viewed that whole thing. So Dave went and did the homework for you. And number two, it has to do with the striving of the Elven aesthetic and wisdom that is desirable, but not by being Elven, but by learning from the Elven examples. And the Elven examples are not all perfect. We're going to be very straight with that, okay? There's definitely examples of Elven energy in these stories that are not always in the highest alignment, but they quite often are. And part of the reason for that is because the elves, being immortal, being the elder of the creations, it was part of the gig for them. And so rather than having to learn the hard way, because we notice over time that humans kind of do stupid human tricks over and over again, we had this idea of, well, why don't we learn from how the elves did things so that we don't have to make quite as many mistakes in our lives, even if they are mortal, okay? Even if we as humans are mortal, okay? So that's the basic two reasons that we are called the Elven Path. So if you, like Dave, identify as something entirely that is not Elven, okay, I would say Therianthrope is not Elven.
Right.
Okay. You may still find tremendous value in the Legendarium and the lessons that are in the books. Okay. It would be like, I guess it would be kind of like reading the Bible and saying, oh, wow, this is beautiful. But then like thinking that you have to be Jewish in order to resonate with the Bible. And that's not true. Okay. The stories should be like exemplary of themselves for their own lessons. Now, the thing is that even as good as the Bible is with the lessons and everything, I just never connected as deeply to the material as I do with Tolkien's material. So that's the difference with me. But we'll go ahead and get to Luthien's input that we have here. And we just wanted to talk about this so that it gives you guys some reasons about like why you might be attracted to the Elven Path, how your practice is. And by the way, if you identify as Elven, it's even better, right? It's enhanced, but you don't have to. It's not why we're called the Elven Path. You do not need to be Elven to be here. What you do need to be is open to the wisdom of the stories and like knowing how like your next steps with like even your own spiritual unfolding, your spiritual path, like how would a wise being do the next thing in if they were in your shoes, right? Some of those types of things, I think Tolkien was a master at portraying. And probably, maybe he knew it, maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just him just telling the stories and everything was just supposed to be fiction. Maybe it is kind of more like a mytho-historical, you know, almost like that this is the Bible, okay, for people who resonate with this material, like how I see it. But even if you are not any of those things, I believe that anybody that is interested in this path can learn from the wisdom, particularly displayed by the elves in the stories. Okay, so just letting you know, if you don't resonate Elven, you are welcome, as long as you are striving on a path of love, okay, for self and others, and doing it in a sovereign way, because I would say elves are sovereign beings. So this is about us becoming sovereign and yet still in a healthy community, like where everything is balanced. And I would say that elves definitely strive for balance, like rather than perfection or rather than, you know, other things. There's a balance of things, and nature, by example, strives for balance. And so I think that the elves learned a lot from nature also. And they were immortal, so they had a lot of time to learn all of this stuff, right? So, Dave, did you have anything to add? Okay.
Yeah. Just to so that just reading it, I realize that the people who are brand new to this may not know what this italicized quote is from. That's I do list where in the part of the Silmarillion that is from, but this is Iluvatar speaking at first when it says I, and then it's about his thought in that first italicized section. So that's who the he and I are referring to, in case it isn't clear to somebody.
Oh, meaning Eru Iluvatar, the source, the creator, the all that is.
Right.
Okay.
Right after Luthien's first sentence there, you know, when she
says,
okay.
And yeah, some people might not know that Atani is also another word for men or humans.
Right.
Rather than the elves, because that was the eldaliéva or the Quendi.
Right.
So Atani is men. Yeah.
I'm so used to these terms that I forgot to hyperlink that one. But anyway.
Oh, that's okay. we can provide. You know what we'll do? We'll provide a hyperlink in into Tolkien Gateway or something like that. We'll do an Atani link in the video description for anybody that wants to look it up. So that'll be fine. Okay, and Atani, if you guys can't see it, I'm going to use the cursor and I'm going to circle it. This is where it is, right here. Okay, so Luthien, Maryland, 5:15 in the morning, June 15th. So, I mean, if that was her time zone, wow.
That was mine.
It's like
actually.
she's up early in the morning. So I was figuring that it might be 5:15 Eastern time rather than her time.
That was mine. Yeah, that was mine.
I thought so. As described in the Legendarium, both elves and men have a degree of free will, but, quoting the Silmarillion, this is Eru speaking, but to the Atani I will give a new gift. Therefore, he, meaning Eru, willed that the hearts of men should seek beyond the world and should find no rest therein, but they should have a virtue to shape their life amid the powers and chances of the world, beyond the music of the Ainur, which is as fate to all things else. And of their operation, everything should be in form and deed completed, and the world fulfilled unto the last and the smallest. Okay, that is a beautiful quote. And what I will take away from that, Dave, and to everyone watching, and even tonight, even the replay, what that tells me is that there is a human role, even when we are the smallest, or, you know, like the order of everything, it would seem that we have a very small role. Okay, kind of like the Hobbit, you know, like with Galadriel saying even the smallest person can make a difference, you know, with the course in the future, right? It is absolutely known that humans push the boundaries on things, and in the process, discover new things. Some of those things are a disaster. And some of those things, even if it's only 1% or 0.5%, end up expanding nature in some fashion. And then nature has to like reintegrate and do things with that. So I do see the role of humans stretching nature all the time, like, because we are always at this strange battle where we push nature. We, you know, like just right now, like we're talking on computers that, like, you know, are metal and all of these things, and why can't we just do telepathy, right? And we could just connect in a telepathic way. That would be more natural. But here we are using all of this technology. Okay, and we are expanding the world because of this technology, even with all the harm that came with it. Okay, and this might even be considered outside of the boundaries of the creation that Eru originally created when he had the Ainur sing everything into existence. Humans may have a role, even though they have the gift of death, which means that they're mortal. In that short lifetime, they strive to break the boundaries of what might be the creation in order to create new creations within the creation that could never be thought of. That is how I take that statement. And I'm going to switch back over here so that, because I have been neglecting the comments. So I'm going to do this now. I'm going to see the comments. Draco and Nimue. There was some material in Morgoth's Ring in the Adanel section. Oh, okay. Thank you for noting that. We do have Morgoth's Ring. maybe Dave, do you think that maybe we can upload the same files, or do we have to do a new
Well,
link in
if you
order to put the
as
Morgoth ring material?
when you read later in the document, I actually found a section of the Atrabeth Finard Andrath, which is that philosophical discussion, and it's in a link closer to the bottom of the document. So there's a link to it, and there's also a version of it in the actual archive. So you just didn't have time to read this,
I did. I haven't had time to read it.
Okay.
And I'll complete the sentences. So what he says is that the material in Morgoth's ring in the Adenel section that alluded to mannish beliefs.
Right.
Okay. So that's, I forgot to read the rest of it. So part of that is because YouTube tends to like only have so much room for a live stream comment, and then what it'll do is it'll continue a new comment, so I won't notice that it will be not completed comment until I look at the next one. I'm like, oh, that was part of the first comment, so sorry about that. That Flat Fellow says the best live streams. Okay, and I'm not sure who you are, but hi, Flat Fellow, how are you doing? And Merlin says, beautifully said. So, yeah, I do believe that humans tend to push boundaries. But in order to push boundaries, so think about this for a moment. So let's say that we are like a super wise elf and who's been around for thousands of years. We might not want to take a risk if we know that it's kind of stupid to do it, because we know like all the outcomes are probably going to be like, you know, like a not a good outcome. However, you need enough naivete in order to push the boundaries, because you don't know what's going to happen. Now you can know like maybe 90% of what's going to happen, but you don't know that little bit that might be what Eru Iluvatar intended for the humans that he created, which was to expand even his own vision in their small way. And then when the re-singing of the song comes together and the elves and the men join with the Valar, the Maiar, the Ainur, and Eru to re-sing the song of creation for the next time, wow. Wow. That's all I'm going to say about that. That Flat Fellow says, I've watched y'all for about a year now. I just don't chat a lot. Just wanted to say I enjoy the live streams. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you watching.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. If you don't mind sharing, I wonder like how Tolkien and either the elves or Tolkien's works, how they may have affected you, like why you're so drawn to the material and how it like relates to your spirituality. We would like to know. If you wouldn't mind typing it in the comments. I will switch back to the document, but I will switch back to the comments and read them when I get a chance, and we'll make sure that we acknowledge everything going on here. So for now, I'm going to switch back to the document. Okay. And we have the footnote. Everything has been done here. So, okay. From that follows that it is at least easier for men to act separately from the music of the Ainur, which is as fate to all things else. Isn't that what I said that in a different way when I was talking about pushing the boundaries of the intentions of the music of the Ainur to create Ea. Okay. The men have a special job in order to perpetuate even the longest parts of those creations and make them something more than they were, even at like what looks like a great loss. It could be the very thing that is needed in order to expand beyond the knowing of even Iluvatar. So, Dave, we were talking about Eru Iluvatar being kind of like, like we talk about the as above, so below, wherein, like the gods and goddesses energies are like reflected in things below, so that like we may resonate with archetypes of, these higher beings and these things like this. But isn't this interesting where it looks like it could even be kind of reversed, where we think of Iluvatar and we don't really know, like there's a mystery that we don't quite know everything about Iluvatar, all that is Eru Iluvatar.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Could we then actually say the same thing about humans? Meaning that Eru maybe doesn't even know the extent to what humans can do? Even though he designed the whole thing?
There's certainly always... Well, actually, Luthien goes into that in her sentences below there, but I just want to say more generally, they've always been a mystery to me as both a Tiger Therianthrope and a person on the autism spectrum. The ordinary humans have always been a mystery to me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can understand that. Although there are quite a few humans now that are maybe not therianthropes. I would say that that's unique, unless you were in a tribal shamanic
right.
kind of I don't know what you want to call it, prior types of tribal origin paths that had their like resident shaman and those types of things. I would say that your ability in that is probably well documented for those tribes and for the things that you do. But
right.
As far as civilization today, I would say that that's a rare talent. However, the autism spectrum and Aspergian energies, etc., are growing. And I think that is an interesting thing too.
I believe it's part of what I referred to, we've spoken to you privately, as incipient speciation going on. But you heard it from me first, but it won't be proven for decades. But
it won't be proven for maybe a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, meaning that, so if anybody doesn't really know what we're talking about with that, it would be like, in science, I remembered learning about like, when a genetic, like it would seem like a defect happened, but in lifetime, like in actual practice, that defect ended up becoming a strength or even something to compete even better in the way of life. Okay. And so then that gene defect then becomes like a dominant thing that gets passed on. And it started as an accident. Okay. So again, we're talking about like, humans might be the thing that like accidentally discover certain things that expand certain things that could never be foreseen, even by Eru Iluvatar. Okay. So I'll go back to Luthien with what she's writing here. I have always understood that humans are not as strongly bound to act in the spirit of Iluvatar as elves do, though even some elves manage to turn rebellious, like an example of Feanor, or even the, elven bastards, okay, like, meaning not like bastards like what we say in slang, but like the meaning of that, meaning that born out of wedlock, those types of things.
No, she means the more colloquial meaning of
yes,
these Aeol and Saros are not nice guys, whether they're human.
They're not nice guys, but they were not born of.
One of them cast. The first one cast a spear at his sister, trying to kill her, and the second one tried to attack Turin basically from ambush, but Turin got the better of him. So
Yeah.
there you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. And those links, those go to the
Yeah,
like Tolkien Gateway or to the
yeah,
stories about them so
yeah.
that people can reference them. Okay.
They go to the Tolkien Gateway entries because Tolkien Gateway now is better than
Yeah.
Encyclopedia of Arda because it's structured like a real wiki. So you know,
Yes, it is. And also what I like about the Tolkien Gateway, I loved the Encyclopedia of Arda, but what was so frustrating about that was that even though their information was correct, they didn't properly source the material so that you could just then know
exactly
where to go. And
right,
the
right.
Tolkien Gateway is better about that. So very appreciative of those guys. So shout out to Elf Dict and to Tolkien Gateway. It's great. But then again, you could wonder how free is it if people, humans, follow their impulses, sex, sensation, exciting, dark things. One could just as well argue that not giving in to those impulses is an act of freedom, and especially for a human. She's absolutely right. Okay. Most humans cannot handle the freedom outside of the Iluvatar vision. They cannot. But isn't it worth the actual tiny percentage of people that can? Because they're going to discover something, even at the cost of like 99% of the humanity that does all of these terrible, dark things, right? It just so happens that a lot of people end up waking up. Now, keep this in mind too. Some of the people traveling the dark paths are even the ones that end up with the inspiration because of traveling the dark path, not in spite of it. They literally learn something from the hardship. Okay. Not everybody. Certainly not everybody. There are people that will be addicts their whole life about whatever and then, pass on because literally they die of their addictions, right? But what about the people that are in their addictions and doing all of the stuff, and then they have like the aha wake up moment, and they work and strive towards being more in balance, okay, whether that's sobriety or whatever it is, but they come back from it with a gift that they would not have had it not been for that particular thing. So yeah, I guess we're talking all still here about the same thing. In the end, I don't really think about it as free will or not, because that is an unanswerable question, but more in terms of a natural inclination. And I actually would agree with that, but I feel like free will or not, I do think that this is Calendurniel talking here. I see a relationship between fate and free will as fate is our consequences of our prior decisions. And that could even be prior to our lifetime. In other words, like there might be a contract or something that we ended up having to live out, or something that we agreed to before being born that we agreed to experience in order to learn, okay, in order to, again, grow, expand, all of these things. What is it if Iluvatar was to create all these creations and everything was perfect and everything went to according to design? What would be the point? I think even Iluvatar, Eru Iluvatar, even itself, okay, himself, itself, herself, whatever, okay, the force of Eru Iluvatar wants to grow. That's what I think. Otherwise, the creation song would not have ever had something like Melkor. It's all a learning experience. And even with all the travesty that happens, it's still a learning experience. And so as humans traversing the earth right now, we can actually take this into our own spiritual path and say, wow, you know, I'm human. I did all of these, like, you know, stupid human tricks. I've learned a lot of things from stupid human tricks, and I expanded the vision of Iluvatar even that much more. Okay. And we'll keep doing that until the wrap up of all of this particular creation. And we will have even participated in the expansion. And what will happen to me at the very next, you know, creation song that happens to be sung by even men, by the way, like elves, men, everyone will sing together. I believe that we are taking the cream of the crop of these experiences and discarding the 99% of all of the icky stuff, right? It's like an alchemy. Okay, we are alchemizing. And I think that we do this process even within ourselves, within our own creation. Okay, so in a weird way, we might even mimic aspects of Eru Iluvatar for ourselves, for our own path, a small piece of what that ever looks like. So just saying that, like, I just had that kind of noticing. Regarding that, it is in any case clear, and this is important, you guys. This is like, for those of you who resonate with Elven identity, here's your bullet list, okay? It is clear that the elves are more inclined to follow the music of the Ainur, which I would interpret as more individuals, as in not strongly influenced by group dynamics. I would agree with that. Okay. There is a resonance of the tying together, but each party participating is an individual part that knows their individual part and doing their part before witnessing the creation. So I would agree with that part. Not quick to rebel. Yes, not quick to rebel, because they need that foresight in order to, like, keep everything at an even keel, the balance of nature, protective of nature and natural beauty. Can turn rebellious, but not easily. Usually morally straight as an arrow. Okay, and again, this has to do with keeping the balance. Okay, and inclined to create beauty in art. And I love that part. Whereas humans are, and here's our human checklist, inclined to follow whatever impulse comes their way, easily influenced by group dynamics, almost naturally inclined to rebel in an adolescent way, can be reckless with regard to nature and even destructive. Absolutely. Can be anything from morally sound to completely crooked. Can create beauty in art, but also the utmost in ugliness, and can quite easily be tempted to join the dark side. And that is definitely in the stories where men desire power. Remember that part, you guys? That's that part. Dave, did you have anything to add at this point?
No, just other than she made a great list there.
Yeah, oh, I know, right? That's a brilliant list. There is some sense in Iluvatar's motive for creating humans like that, especially a kind of admitting that you cannot wholly plan the fulfillment of creation. It makes some sense to have humans as loose cannons that have a degree of unpredictability built in. You could even say that the humans prevent creation from being fully deterministic in Iluvatar's view. You could say that there is a Heisenberg uncertainty factor, though it comes at a price, of course. Yes. Yeah, we're saying the same thing, basically. Yeah. I just love, Luthien has such a majorly awesome way with language, too. And I'm not even sure if that's because she's Dutch, like, and it just has different words coming in, or, what's going on. But I mean, I just love how it's kind of the same thing that I'm saying, but totally like in amazing different words. It's so awesome. But Iluvatar knew that men, being set amid the turmoils of the powers of the world, would stray often and would not use their gifts in harmony. And he said, these two in their time shall find that all that they do redounds at the end only in the glory of my work. So in other words, again, in their time, meaning really in all time, right? At the culmination, Ragnarok, right? At the culmination, or like, is it not Ragnarok? That's for the other one.
There's a Ragnarok-like prophesied battle called Dagordagareth. The battle.
Dagordagareth. That's what I'm thinking of. Sorry, I got those mixed up. I apologize. Yes, thank you for the term. When that is the completion of all of these things, and I feel that this statement right here talks about how it's the cream that rises. Okay, it's the alchemical purity essence that we all are creating with so much impurity energy, like, that has to be removed. So it's like literally getting a grain of gold out of, a big pile of turd, right? You got to get through all of this turd part in order to get that tiny bit of gold. And here's the thing. Eru Iluvatar feels like it's worth it. Otherwise would not have ever created humans. Okay? So, anybody that feels like we are anti-human and that we're elven and we have an identity and you're not allowed to be human on this path, we're striking that out right now. This is all about being human. We all have chosen human vessels in order to be here. So whether you identify with elvenness in whatever way, you are still in a human body. You still have human tendencies. Okay. Thank you, Dave. We have so much here to give, okay? And so here is, I guess, the best thing that we as humans can do in this process. So we can learn from the elven energies so that we have less impurity. But we do not want to ignore the aspect of us that makes us human, because we are the ones that help the vision of Iluvatar grow into something else that can be of more beauty. So let's allow that part. So we need to go into our creative energies. And one of the things that we like to do in the path with meditation is we like to create, envision first what we'd like to see in the world. And then through our actions, as much as we can, align with that. And in the process, so we do, like, have a better alignment by choice, okay, not by accident. This is by choice. We have a better alignment with nature, with Iluvatar, okay, with the song, with the creation of Ea. We have a better connection to that. But we can still be the human part that pushes the boundaries. But let's do the boundary pushing with a little bit more wisdom, okay? That's what I say that this whole thing is about. So you being in the Elven path, you are actually helping us, okay, like, meaning humans that like resonate with this path. You guys are actually helping that particular growth even permeate more into the world, and we'll have more cream of the crop. We will have more gold and less of the turd around the gold. Bigger gold, less turd. I'm all in. Right? So, yeah, I'm just so eloquent tonight. Okay, so the next part here, this is like where it switches back to where Dave goes into like describing in the document. So we quoted Luthien, and so now we're switching back to Dave's writing. So just to be clear, there exists, and this is in loose quotes, a major and finished work entitled Othrabeth Finrod Andrith, the converse, meaning the conversation, of Finrod and Andrith, which details the difference in fate and thus soul inclinations of both elves and men, published in Morgoth's Ring, which is Home Volume 10. Thank you, Dave. You did say that you did mention that. It is a detailed and rather complex work, so it is best to read in full rather than in summary. And to facilitate this, I, meaning Dave, recently discovered a unique piece of fan fiction which incorporates the Athrabeth into a document which is presented as if it is a part of Bilbo's translations from Elvish, which became the Silmarillion. Oh, wow, that's amazing. You can read the introductory blog here, so it's linked, and then a link to the actual PDF is at the very end of this entry, and that particular PDF is also included as an archive in the link that we have in the description that is in the zip file. Okay. So in case this blog entry goes offline in the future, which was smart, Dave, thank you. Because boy, more and more of the good stuff is going offline these days, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a problem for me because I mean we started bookmarking stuff in 2005, and a lot of it's gone offline. So
yeah, and whoever knew about cyber archaeology here,
right.
trying to find like little scripts of things that like existed at once, and it's kind of like it's an alternative approach to discovering history, because it's in like within the realm of when technology really changed. And so we're still changing, by the way, and we're going to change a lot more in the next 20 years. You watch. Wow. We won't even recognize humanity, I don't believe. I really think that we're going to be changing a lot. So, hang on to your hats. Okay. So in addition to Othrabeth, Tolkien's essay on fairy stories is Tolkien's defining study of and the center point in his thinking about that genre, as well as being the theoretical basis for the Legendarium. And thus, it is both the essential and natural companion to his writings. An accurate copy of this full essay can be obtained here, which is a link, for an analysis of the development of JRR Tolkien's ideas surrounding the writing of fairy stories, whilst composing the various versions of this essay in the years 1938 to 1964. See this paper, which is also linked and also included in the archive in case this source disappears. Hooray! You know what, you guys? Just open the link, open the zip file, get it all, right? Like Dave already did all of this for you. But it's good to know where he discovered this from. So that's awesome too. Dave, did you want to read the rest of this so that I get a break?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
This last quote is from Tolkien's introduction to a story he wrote. His essay on fairy stories, which Calantonio just mentioned, and a later work called Smith of Wootton Major are interrelated, and they're actually quite heavily interrelated. It's just that they were written at different time periods. But Tolkien would often write something he would continue thinking about it, even though he wouldn't write on it anymore, except for a few notes over like decades. And then these concepts would be turning over in his mind, and then like 2 or 3 decades later, he'd start writing, uh, basically not picking up where he left off, but picking up it in an evolutionary sense of where he left off. Like he left off 30 years ago, and then the whole ideas had evolved in his mind over 30 years. He would write a similar thing, but it would be more evolved. It would be at a higher level of evolution, and that's what Smith of Wotton Major is with regard to the On Fairy Stories essay. And this this quote here comes from the introduction to Smith of Wotton Major. The extended edition was published in 2005. When I first read Smith of Wotton Major, that was way before 2005, so I didn't have this introduction because Christopher or the Tolkien estate or whoever was in charge of it decided not to
Oh.
publish it at that time. But
Hmm.
this is in his introduction, as he probably would have published it if he would have been able to publish it. Basically, death caught up with him. That's a problem with a lot
Yeah.
of Tolkien's works. So
That
uh,
happens probably at every opportunity or non-opportunity, as it,
right,
you know.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fairy was once a big word, including many marvelous things, but it has in ordinary use dwindled, so that I suppose to many people fairy now means first of all a little creature. But fairy tales are not just stories in which imaginary creatures of this kind appear. Many do not mention them at all. In many others where they do appear, such as in the Golden Key, they are not important. The truth is that fairy did not originally mean a creature at all, small or large. It meant enchantment or magic, and the enchanted world or country in which marvelous people lived, great and small, with strange powers of mind and will for good and evil. There all things are wonderful: earth, water, air, and fire, and all living and growing things, beasts and birds, and trees and herbs were strange and dangerous, for they had hidden powers and were more than they seemed to be to mortal eyes. The fairy queen was not a queen shaped like a little fairy, but the queen of fairy, a great and dangerous person, however beautiful, queen of the enchanted world and all its people. A fairy tale is a tale about that world. And I included that because it's a good, concise description of what Tolkien was trying to really do with all of his writings, I think. So it's a tale about the enchanted world and all of its people. So there you are.
Yeah, I love it. And actually, I think that is a nice. We have a video in our series. If you look in public classes, you will notice that we have a video in the difference between elves and fairies. So this kind of like intermarries with that also.
Right, right,
Yeah. And yes, fairy, meaning Faery, is often the spelling for the other world that is called fairy, meaning that it's a location, but it's like a dimensional location rather than the
right.
beings. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then here are the footnotes. And did you want to discuss any of the footnotes, or because we read through this
Only
pretty quickly,
yeah.
so we'll go ahead and
Um.
let you do that.
The quotes from the Silmarillion that we read earlier came into basically they come from the Quenta Silmarillion, which is the Silmarillion proper book. See, the Silmarillion published as a physical book or even an ebook now contains several works which are interrelated. Quenta Silmarillion is usually what people mean when they talk about the Silmarillion being the early history of the elves in the first age and all the battles and struggles and tragedies and heroism and everything that went on. One of the early chapters is the beginning of days, and those quotes come from paragraph 22 and 23, I think. Let's see here. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and so Now, the only one I really wanted to talk about is the last endnote, which is endnote 5, where the this refers back to the uh, uh, the Finrod Atrabeth Finrod Andreth, which is the converse of Finrod
Okay.
and Andreth, and how I found that work, which it's presented as if it's a part of Bilbo's translations from the Elvish. I said I myself. Now this is just Dave Loosley's personal preference. You may like that copy that I found fine, and it is nice. The way that the author made it as a work of fan fiction by putting the Atrabeth in it is really well done. But
Cool.
I like Tolkien's original story where he had the personage of the Viking era seafarer Ariel, also called Elfwine, who finds the straight road by chance on a boat and makes landfall upon Tall Eressëa, and by speaking directly with the elves there and hearing their legends, uh, gets all these legends in his head. Later, when he makes it back to Europe, he writes it all down, and that's that early version of how the Legendarium came to us, versus
Okay.
that Bilbo wrote it down and it was found in an Oxford library somewhere. So I just prefer the earlier version because I'm more I don't know exactly what you want to call it. I guess if I identify fairly heavily with my Choctaw ancestry, and a lot of that is a lot of in Native American um, mythology. A lot of it is orally transmitted, so I
Yeah.
just prefer this oral transmission, eventually written down, and that sort of thing.
Right.
I prefer
Right. But
Tolkien's
I would say
original
that
idea.
any kind of, first diving into some of these things before, quote, reworking the story. So when it's like a straight download, a straight
Right, right,
transmission from spirit, I think that it's more pure when you are like bringing it into, and then when you have a chance to like organize it and play around with it, it's much more of a mental, like, left brain process. The other one
exactly.
being much
Yeah,
more
yeah,
right brain process. But I think the right brain process is probably closer to the actual truth, even if it's not organized and understood that way. So,
right.
by the way, I
That's
was going
why.
to ask, do you mean that it's the number 6 footnote rather than number 5? Because number 5 looks like Quinta Silmarillion of the beginning of days, paragraph 23. So number 6 is the one with the
Okay,
Viking
yeah,
era seafarer. Okay,
yeah, okay. It's
number
displaying a bit
6.
weirdly here on mine, but okay, yeah, okay,
And
yeah,
that's totally fine, and I
yeah,
understand, like, yeah, because those numbers are really small. So I
right,
thought that I would just double
right.
check with you. So I am going to the comments at this point, and that flat fellow says it relates a lot about the temptations in life and our spiritual will to resist temptation. It also relates to me in the wisdom gained along our path in life. That's very well said. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Merlin, son of the Fae, has like faces laughing and crying. I think that, oh yes, it probably was when I was talking about alchemy and us like finding the larger gold in the smaller turd. And he says that actually is one of my favorite swear words, because when I use curse words, I couldn't help but laugh. So he apparently uses that term, and then
Oh,
like thought it was funny that I use that term
right.
apparently. So then he says, true, very true. And then that flat fellow says exactly what I typed pretty much. And so that's all the comments that we have. There's no questions from the peanut gallery today, but if you are watching the replay of this and you have a question about, well, how does elvenness or non-elvenness relate to me? How can I access the wisdom of the stories? How can I, participate in the Elven Spiritual Path, but not be an elf? You are absolutely allowed. And you can start with our Aina Lindale. We have a 3-class series that we did on the Aina Lindale. And We want you to watch it. You don't even need to opt in. If you go to our link tree, which I put in the bottom link, and if I didn't, I'll make sure I put it. You will see no opt-in. Watch Eldaliéva. Just watch those 3 videos. You'll get kind of like not only an idea about who we are and what we talk about, but you will also see if this is a path that resonates for you. Because I will say that my largest hit on this whole path, like when it started happening to me, was reading the Eldaliéva and the Valaquenta. Because it is such a core backbone of our existence, really. The other parts of Tolkien's Legendarium fill in all of the blanks really well. But if you are looking for hey, is this path for me? Check out those videos. And if you feel really pulled to be in the Elven path, and you do not have to be Elven in identity, Elven in bloodline, Elven in soul, Elven in wisdom, Elven in anything. The path itself is Elven, not the people, not the people that come here. Because Dave, on his own admission, is nothing like the elves. Although he really is. Because one thing I can tell you about Dave is that he has good foresight.
And I started it.
I know you did. But you started, not only did you start the path originally, but you understood the aesthetic that the elves were trying to achieve in the stories. Like you saw, oh, wow, like what is the most wise action that can happen here? That was something that was displayed over and over again by the elves. And it's something that we as humans can do in our process of, well, hopefully accelerating, the ascension, if you will, or Daggerith, or whatever you guys want to call this procedure. Okay, but we are trying to elevate humanity by making better choices, but not by not being human, because humans have a purpose, and that is to expand things. But we can do it with a little bit less damage, right? A little bit less crap. Okay, we don't have to, do 99% crap in order to get that golden nugget of the expansion of Ea, the all that is. All we have to do is just use a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of foresight, trying to keep things balanced in nature. But trust me, we will still end up finding ways to do things. And like I said, here we are talking on a computer, like a bunch of metal parts, that you have metal parts in your hand, probably, that you're probably watching like this, right? That would be like amazing magic to anybody looking at that from even 40, 50 years ago. Like nobody would even totally imagine what that's like. Technology can be its own form of magic, but we want technology within the bounds of nature. But that doesn't mean that we cannot do technology evolvement, right? We can still do these things, even with all the fallout that will happen in the process, but it's a necessary process. So I wish all of you your own alchemical working on your human contribution to Ea and the all that is that Iluvatar envisioned all that time ago. And Dave, do you have anything to say, wrapping up?
Beginning of why we decided that, we've had a lot of people ask, well, do I have to be Elven or Elven oriented? Taking that idea, and then like Calantrino just said, my like she calls my recognizing the qualities of elves as a, see, for me, when I first started this group in 2005, actually before eldaliéva was founded, I founded at the time there was something called Yahoo groups. So I started this Yahoo group called
Ancient history here.
Yeah. Now, but a lot of the people were joining it were coming in and saying, "I'm otherkin this and I'm otherkin that." I didn't know what they were talking about because, unless I separated and which, that the term "he is from other kin" is actually in Tolkien's Legendarium, but they were using it differently, run
They
together,
were
and I'm
using it
like, "What
differently.
exactly are they
Yeah.
talking about?" But yeah, so I had to look it up, and my problem with it, I've often been accused of dissing the other kid. Well, perhaps, but they also diss me in the sense that I was expecting people who identified with the elven archetype to act like elves in Tolkien's Legendarium, but they acted almost the opposite. They were very group think centric and very, if you're not one of us, then you're an abomination, sort of thing. And I'm like, well, then I'm an
Right.
abomination. I should put on an abomination crown.
But again, I think that even as a human and the Aspergian energy, the autism spectrum energy, the neurodiverse energy, the therianthrope energy of the tiger therian, okay, those things in you actually expand Eru's original vision. Do you see where I'm going? And you try to temper that with wisdom.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that I really,
Right.
really vibe with you, Dave, is because you do all of this for the expansion of wisdom and doing it within the bounds of nature as much as possible. We know that nature is there's things that could kill us, We go outside and we could get eaten or whatever, you know what I mean? There's so many things that we are tempering our strength, okay, even as humans, in order to do great feats, okay? And if we need an example of a great feat of a human, let's take Beren, okay? Beren and Luthien, okay, when he went just fully punk rock and got the Silmaril from Sauron, right? Or Morgoth, I take it back, Morgoth, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That was an beyond Olympic feat that he did. That's like bigger than the Navy SEALs could do. You know what I mean? And it was a human. So I want all of us to really resonate deeply within our humanness and not disown that, but let's just learn from wisdom of the elves that are displayed in the stories. Okay. And if you resonate with elvenness, I get it. Okay. Again, align with the wisdom but don't disown your human body that you are in right now, because this is the time. Okay. This is the time that the human energy actually is needed for the innovation and for us to alchemically transform this energy into a higher expression towards the whole, I guess the whole Daggereth of Iluvatar, okay, the whole completion energy, so that when we come back to sing the song, it's going to be like a million times better. Okay, that's my vision for this. And yes, some of the humans that do the behavior that Luthien was talking about, that's lesser than, because, bodily urges, temptations, addictions, trauma, all of the things. Okay. So the more that we can actually heal as human beings, the more we can actually do the work of the becoming that pure gold that Eru Iluvatar originally intended when he created humans. Okay. And that's what I'm going to end with. And, I guess we'll wrap up this whole thing up. Thank you all for coming. Thank all of you for who are watching the replay. And if you have anything to say, put it down in the comments. We'll talk about it. We'll answer as best as we can. You can also watch the eldaliéva videos that I mentioned earlier to see if like this is a path for you, like if it feels like a path. And just on our note, like even in our bylaws, we do this. We do not ask that you leave your other path. However, we will ask that while you're participating in our path, that's what you stay within the bounds of. And you can make comparative, notices. But, we just ask that, like, because not everybody will be familiar with like where you come from with your path or like your viewpoints or what have you. So if you can do a comparison of those things, and as long as your path is based on like human upliftment and love and balance and like, natural balance of the earth and all of the things, and not damage and not, like, I don't know what you want to call it, but not human suppression. Okay. Like we don't want any of that kind of energy here. That is energies of forces that we do not encourage. Okay. And Tolkien in the stories shows us why we should not encourage that. Okay. And I'm not going to call it bad and then us good. And I mean, that's just, that's like kindergarten, whatever. Okay. It's more than that. It has to do with being like, it's like accessing your inner nobility, right? To be exactly. Like in a way, like the king, meaning your own sovereignty, okay? Your own grounded, like, and again, we talked about like not having groupthink, but it doesn't mean that we don't need community, okay? So we need to be strong individuals within community and a willing and volunteering way, instead of like just running amok and, just listening to whatever anybody says and then defaulting to that and not thinking and, not having a mind of our own. So we are going to be strong for you. Okay. Like that's what we strive for. We're going to be strong. We're going to have the alchemical gold. And so thank you, Dave, for reminding me on the chat. We do have an upcoming meeting on Sunday, and I have not posted it yet because I have been so busy. Okay. But we have, for our patrons only, we have normally it's going to be on second Sunday, but we're going to have it on this Sunday, July 31st. And I don't remember what time. Let me go look at my calendar here. It will be at noon on Pacific time. So that would mean 3 p.m. Eastern time. Okay. And we're doing that so Dekindre can participate if he's in Hawaii. Okay. And we can also have some participation from our patrons who are over the pond, meaning in Europe and or UK. So hopefully we will get this going. We will not be recording the social. This is a live event, and it's actually so that we can connect all together and be like more, I don't know what you want to call it, but we wanted a more flowing community, because we realized that like people feel close to me, Colin Jerniel, because you guys see my face all the time. You guys hear my voice, you hear Dave's voice, all of the stuff, but we want everybody to have opportunities to know each other. And we felt that this was a really good way to do that. So we're going to start these, and we're going to try for monthly on the second Sunday. So second Sunday social setting. That's what we're calling it right now until we find a better name. Okay. So be looking for that in Patreon and also in Facebook and Instagram. Well, I'll point to the Patreon post, and I'll try to message some of you guys with the Google Meet code in order to meet in our room, and we will not be recording, just so that everybody knows. This is going to be like an organic, meeting for us to hang out and get to know each other, and feel free to speak. And I mean, don't be stupid with Google. Don't talk about things that Google will like tune in on. Okay. And like do anything like that. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys get going for the evening. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for your participation. We hope that this video was valuable for you. We hope that you now understand a little bit more about what we mean by Elven Spiritual Path, and that it has to do with the origin stories rather than us having Elven identity of any particular kind, although some of us do, okay? And that is totally fine. That is totally fine. But we wanted to be very clear about like our own co-founder, who, by the way, is actually the real founder, okay? That would be Dave, okay? Is not Elven, okay?
I'm just very interested in the Legendarium, you know. So
very
I'm
much
the
so.
head Legendarium researcher.
And you are the best researcher that we could ever ask for, and we are like more than appreciative, believe me. So good night, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and hopefully we'll see some of our patrons on Sunday. Good night.
Yes. Goodbye, everyone.